Hello and Assalamualaikum. My name is Nasuha and today I'll be presenting about my final year project 1 proposal. Okay, so the title for my FYP project is Interpretation and Translation of Malaysian Sign Language for Hearing Impaired Individuals using MATLAB. Okay, so get to know me. So I am a UTHM student and I am currently learning in electronic engineering, which is basically in mechatronic department. And my full name is Nasuha and my metric number is AE180014. Okay, so project background. Okay, so the project background. So I have divided the categories into 5, which is the context, motivation, aim, method, and project outcome. So first, the context. So for the context, about 1 billion, or in total 15% of the world population, suffers from disabilities. But if we were to be more specific, over 5% of the world population suffers from hearing disabilities. This, however, should not be an excuse to hinder their lifestyle, meaning even if they were to be born with disabilities, this should not make their lifestyle lesser compared to those who are born in a good condition. Okay, so motivation to finish the project. By finishing this project, we could help alleviate these people's lifestyle by helping them communicate their thoughts if they were to use sign language in order to communicate with others. Okay, studies on these topics mostly covers on ASL, which is American Sign Language, with none of it covering on BML, which is Bahasa Malaysia Sign Language, which is why I specifically focus on Bahasa Malaysia Sign Language. So for the aim of FYP is to aid those born with the hearing disabilities in their everyday lives, which is like when they are communicating with others. So the method that we will be using is, we'll be using the deep learning function in MATLAB to help identify what each hand gestures mean, which is like for sign language, they will be using sign gestures like to symbolize what each of those things mean. Okay, as for the sources, for the deep learning, the data set, we will be mostly using the data set or those pictures that are in the official website of Malaysian Sign Language. Okay, so for the project outcome, by the end of the project, we will be able to simulate the classification of hand gestures according to alphabet and numbers. And second, we will be able to help the users to have an idea of what the sign language is supposed to mean. Meaning, if those with disabilities were to sign what they're trying to say, at least the users will have a slight knowledge or a slight idea of what those are supposed to mean. Okay, so next is the problem statement. Okay, so for the problem statement, what is hearing impairment? So hearing impairment, deafness, or hearing loss refers to the total or partial inability to hear sounds. In total, there are few versions of it, ranging from mild to severe. So below are the degrees of hearing loss. Okay, so first is light, which is like a hearing loss of 16 to 25 decibels. Next is mild, 26 to 40 decibels. Moderate, 41 to 55 decibels. Fourth is moderately severe, 56 to 70. And severe, 71 to 90 decibels. And lastly, profound which is more than 90 decibels. For the slight, perhaps they can listen, they can still listen, but they have a slight difficulties. But for the severe and profound, they most likely will not be able to hear anything and will have to resort to sign language and maybe other means of communication to communicate with others instead of talking or hearing. Okay, so next in problem statement. Okay, in Malaysia, if we were to talk about those in Malaysia, percentage of people with hearing disabilities in Malaysia, there are a total of 21.57%, or 1/5 of the population suffers from hearing loss. Okay, so those with hearing disabilities can have a a couple of issues such as communication problems, education problems, emotional disturbance, difficulties in maintaining or forging social relationships, low self-esteem, sense of isolation, frustration, and loss of confidence. Why this issue occurs? Okay, so this could be to the lack of knowledge from the public in regards on how to use the sign language, which is basically means like this issue stems because of their disabilities hindering them from being able to communicate their thoughts. So, for example, like education problem, right? So perhaps they lack the necessary tools or means to ask when they have problems, right? So, like if they were to ask their friends, perhaps their friend does not know how to use sign language. So, what that can imply is that they will have difficulties in learning due to they not being able to convey their questions properly. Okay, so that is one. Okay, so why is it so hard to communicate using sign language? Okay, so first of all, this could be due to multiple reasons. First, each country have different sign language. Okay, what does that mean? Compared to the popular belief, which is like each country use one sign language, it's actually not like that, because like language, each country have different sign language. So maybe those who are living in the America use different sign language, and those who are living in Malaysia use different sign language. Okay, so that's one. Okay, so and next is there are different gestures for each alphabet, numbers, action words, and many more, making it hard to remember them all. Because let's say if a person want to say eat, perhaps that since there are each signs for each alphabet, but if like say let's eat, right? They want to say eat. Okay, perhaps that is not quite a difficult thing to do, but if they were to sign a much longer words, it will take forever to sign those things. So there are different gestures as well for action words or plays. So to remember those all, it would be quite difficult features to be done. Okay, so that can be an issue when trying to learn sign language or trying to communicate using sign language. Okay, so next is objectives. Okay, objectives. Okay, so the objectives of our FYP is to identify the difficulties faced by those with hearing disabilities in communicating in their everyday life, and the next is to determine the image processing techniques used to help identify as well as translate the Malaysian Sign Language. And next is to evaluate the effectiveness of these features to the target users. Next is scope of work. Okay, scope of work basically is what we will be limiting our work to, so that we know when to stop the work. So basically we will know the limit of each work process. Okay, so first, the simulation as well as image processing will be done by using the MATLAB software. Next, the dataset that will be used in this project will be of the alphabet A to Z, and number 1 to 10 instead of whole words, which means like instead of action words, phrases like I mentioned earlier. However, for alphabet I and Z, as well as the number 10 will be excluded as they use dynamic gestures, meaning for like perhaps like alphabet A, perhaps they are just static gestures. They will not have to require movement, but for I and Z they require movement, which is why we excluded them, because we'll be using image processing. Okay, the hand gesture. Next is the hand gesture of the users will be captured by using the user's laptop webcam, and the output will be displayed in the format of English alphabets or numerals. Okay, and lastly, the image processing techniques will only be using a single image as a target each time. Okay, so as I mentioned, the image processing, right? Okay, so what this means by single image, meaning the system will only be able to translate one gestures at one time. Okay, one image at one time. Okay, next is methodology. Okay, so basically the methodology is how we'll be working in order to achieve our FYP. Okay, so the first phase is discovering. Okay, which is discovering the main problem for those with hearing disabilities to communicate in their daily lives. And next is gathering information based on studies done on this topic. Next is the second phase, design and development, which is collecting the required dataset for the image processing, which is perhaps the alphabets and the numbers. Perhaps we can collect as many data as possible for that dataset. And next is software development using MATLAB, which is deep learning. Okay, so for phase 3, which is testing and analysis, the testing will be done on the various combination of Malaysian Sign Language available in the internet to test the software effectiveness. So perhaps this, instead of testing on a real person with disabilities, perhaps I will just sign it myself and test whether the software are able to detect what those sign means. Okay, so next is expected results. Okay, so the expected results, we have two things in the expected results, which is first is the software workflow. Okay, so for the software workflow, which is first, we want to be able to put the input image into the system. And then later on, after the image has been inputted, we wanted the image to be able to undergo the pre-processing and segmentation process. And then we wanted it to features extraction. And then later on, classifications and base generation, which is classifying this image to the respected gestures and meanings like that. And lastly, hand gestures interpretation. So these are how we want the software to work at the end of the project. Okay, so this is basically what I said earlier. In the end, the software should be that it will be able to detect the hand gestures by using the webcam, and then later on translate it based on its meaning in Malaysian Sign Language. For example, this is an example based on previous studies. So let's say this is the input image, and after that the software will undergo a couple of processes such as mentioned earlier, which is pre-processing, segmentations, classifying by bits. Okay, and then after it undergoes those processes, it will be able to detect what those gestures mean. So for here it says gesture recognition system identify gesture is L, which is the L alphabet. Okay, so that is all for my presentation on my final year project proposal. Thank you.